So this is a three-part presentation with an introduction. This is the introduction now, and there will be time between parts 1 and 2 for questions and comments. So if something's on your mind, please put it in the chat or unmute briefly to speak. We'll try the chat and see if that works. And then be sure to mute yourself afterward. And there'll be some time for discussion after part 3 too, hopefully. So here's the introduction. The official website reports this. Burning Man is a collection of artists, constructors, and community organizers
I'm usually not a fan.
create
I mean,
art
this
and
one was
events
cool.
together with the people who support
I
them.
don't know.
Tens of thousands of burners
super
gather
nice.
annually to build
We
Black
see it
Rock City
once a week.
and experience their work in a participative temporary metropolis in the Nevada desert. The nonprofit Burning Man Project produces the event in Black Rock City, and it provides year-round support to a growing network of regional Burning Man communities around the world. This year at Black Rock City, there were some 72,000 attending. Now, the website also states that the event's guided by the values expressed by 10 principles. So if you want to know what it's about, refer to the 10 principles. I'll bring them up from time to time in the account which follows, and I'll summarize them. Here they are again, as described. Radical inclusion. Anybody can be a part of Burning Man. Strangers are welcome and respected. Gifting. Burning Man is devoted to acts of gift giving. All performances and refreshments are offered for free. No contributions requested or accepted. Decommodification. No commercial sponsorships, transactions, trademarks, or advertising are allowed. Radical self-reliance. Burning Man encourages the individual to discover, exercise, and rely on their inner resources. This includes bringing and taking out your own food, supplies, and sleeping arrangements. However, water, ice, and pump out are available. Radical self-expression. No one other than the individual or a collaborating group can determine its content. It's offered as a gift to others, and the giver should respect the rights and liberties of the recipient. Communal effort. Community values, creative cooperation and collaboration. Civic responsibility. Community members who organize events assume responsibility for public welfare, staying in accord with the law. Leaving no trace, very important. We leave no physical trace of our activities wherever we gather. We restore the playa to its original condition upon leaving, relying on the winter rains to remove the muddy tracks. Participation, everyone's invited to work, everyone's invited to play. And very important, immediacy. This experience is in many ways, immediate experience in many ways, our most important touchstone. Burning Man takes place in the now. So this is an aerial view of the event from a very great altitude. Think of it like a donut that someone took a big bite out of. It's about 5 miles across, and it's referred to as Black Rock City because it's in Nevada's Black Rock Desert, or simply it's called the Playa. In the middle of the donut hole, marked by a horizontal arrow here, is the man, a 100+ high foot structure made mostly of wood, which will be set afire later on. Above it, top center, is a vertical lightning bolt that marks the temple, just a dot in the picture, but it's a large structure and nearly as high that will also be burned to mark the end of the event. The playa is laid out like a clock. The temple at the vertical arrow there is at 12 o'clock. Moving to the right, clockwise, the radial streets start at 2 o'clock and run around to 10 o'clock at the top left side of the screen. And the intersecting streets are marked starting at A up to J, so you can always find out where you are. On the left side, there's another arrow which shows the location of the camp where I stayed, which was known as Chair Camp because of my son Peter's oversized moving chair, which was parked there, along with other moving vehicles known as the Automan, the Flashlight, and the TV room. So backing up for a minute, that's the setting, but why did I decide to go there? My son Peter's been talking about it for years and sending pictures and videos. A trip that we took this past May, Peter and I, without Burning Man on my mind even, I went out to White Salmon, Washington, where he lives, and we wound up loading a couple of lightweight off-road motorcycles onto his king-size trailer and going to a similar desert in southeastern Oregon, the Alvord Desert, for a few days. And I came back thinking, if I could do this with Peter, I might be able to do Burning Man. Underlying all of this, too, was an interest in experiencing Peter's world, especially Burning Man, which somehow pulls it all together for him once per year. On top of that, Peter sent me a 15-minute video, believe it or not, called Charlie Goes to Burning Man, which is about another octogenarian named Charlie who went to it a few years back, and which I recommend if you're interested. It's very powerful. And you can find it under that title on YouTube. Charlie Goes to Burning Man. That Charlie had way more physical concerns and limitations than I do currently, and yet he had an amazing experience, which was captured by a videographer who accompanied him. If he could do it, so could I. So there was some preparation needed. You got to get a ticket, arrange travel, get an outfit, think of a shtick, think of an act of some kind, squeeze it all into carry-on luggage, and get a bike, which is very essential. So the ticket and travel, well, I said the event takes place in Black Rock City, just an empty, expansive desert. Comes to life for once a year for a week or so, and then it reverts to desert. Tickets run $735 list price. They can be scarce, but scalpers take over in that case. In this year, with the threat of rain, prices actually dropped as the date came closer. So I found out tickets were available. I had to get my ticket before I could go to a scalper or anything. I managed to get one in combination with the Burner Express bus from Reno. So this was my travel. Air to Philadelphia to Reno, overnight in Reno. Burner Express bus, Reno to Black Rock City. Some very hasty grocery shopping en route. As I said, there's no supplies at the encampment. See the principle about radical self-reliance. The management provides water, ice, and pump outs for a price, nothing else. You bring it in and you haul it out. Fortunately, Peter brought most of our supplies with him in his trailer, so my shopping was for what he'd missed or what he'd used up earlier in the week. I arrived on Wednesday, midweek. The Burner bus stopped for exactly 1 hour at a supermarket, and we all rushed around buying the store out. Then there was a jitney shuttle that took me from the entrance to Black Rock City to my son's stop. And then he met me with his giant chair, about which more is coming up. The tire. The concept is, excuse me a minute, I'm going to take a drink of water. The concept is don't wear anything you'd normally wear in daily life. Bizarre or comical is fine. Scanty attire or occasionally no attire is okay. And some examples. This is Tracy and Diane. They're from our camp. Matter of fact, of all the people I saw at Burning Man, these are the ones closest to me in age. Faux fur is particularly admired, and leopard in particular is very popular. I owe a special debt to Tracy and Diane because their RV turned out to be my ride back to Reno when the Burner bus defaulted. Takeoffs in the military are popular. Dressy but skimpy is in. My lighted jacket made me easy to spot, and it was a safety factor at night when biking across the playa. There you see me in one of my other attires with my son in one of his attires next to me. This is my shtick. I created a role, Charlie Peppercorn, and I went around some of the time wearing a hat with a label that said, "A peppercorn for your thoughts," which was, of course, a play on a penny for your thoughts. It turned out to be a good conversation starter. Peppercorns, by the way, have an interesting story as a medium of exchange. Once they were very valuable. Today, a peppercorn is perhaps the least valuable item there is, and I built that into the conversation. I would have done more, but my project was cut short by the rain, but it holds promise. Had to squeeze everything into a carry-on bag and a knapsack, which was a challenge, but it was made easier by being able to send some stuff to Peter for him to bring along in his trailer. Getting a bike, bikes are essential, as I said. There's no deliveries. You can't have a bike shipped to Black Rock City. You carry it in, you carry it out. So a beach cruiser is preferred because there's no gears to get jammed up and no brakes to get jammed up. Fat tires for the desert. So the solution was a $200 bike from Walmart, which I bought online, and it was delivered free to Peter in Washington. He put it together, painted it red, and brought it along with his stuff. So participants organize themselves into camps. Most of them do it beforehand. Some do it year after year because they're focused on a particular theme, such as food or music or artworks or a mutant vehicle, which I'll explain in a moment. This is chair camp. made up of about 30 people with maybe a dozen cars, trucks, mobile homes, and trailers, organized around an open space with this tent in the middle, a place where you can just sit around out of the sun or the rain and occasionally cook a group meal. Once the event opens, no ordinary vehicles are allowed to drive around the playa, other than emergency ones, of course. What are allowed and encouraged are mutant vehicles, which are auto and truck chassis that have been converted into unusual and fantastical configurations or original designs. Before they can enter the playa, they must be inspected and certified by Burning Man's DMV. That's the Department of Mutant Vehicles. And there's the chair, and there's Peter and myself in it. I should mention this was the 16th year for Peter at Burning Man, and a lot of people recognize and are drawn to that chair. This was home for Peter and myself, not the tent, but the trailer. Peter's business, which is equipment for adventure motorcyclists, takes him all over the Western United States. So the trailer serves as an office and a residence when he's on the road. It has a generator, air conditioning, and Starlink communications. So we weren't particularly roughing it. For those who are into those things, the trailer is known as a toy hauler because the rear section functions as a garage for motorcycles, ATVs, and such. It also converts into a bedroom, and this is where I stayed in comfort. For those without their own facilities, there were rest stations placed all around the playa. Here, the occupants of the Automan are taking a break. The other indispensable vehicle for the playa is the bicycle, preferably a beach cruiser like mine, pictured here, festooned with lights for nighttime operation and equipped with a tennis ball on the stand to keep it from sinking into the desert floor. There are thousands upon thousands of them cruising around the playa day and night. For the more daring, one wheels are popular. The woman riding this one is Sienna. She was the organizer and the coordinator of Chair Camp, a great manager and very athletic. So who goes to Burning Man? Well, a wide variety of people go. Here's a shot of some residents of our camp. My son Peter is the tall person on the left. In the middle are Eric and Jess Waterfall and their 4 children, all aged 10 or younger. This is their 3rd year back. They are Mormons. They avoid drugs, alcohol, caffeine, and smoking, which kind of gives the lie to the idea that you have to be on one or more of those substances to enjoy the event. In fact, I saw essentially no signs of drunkenness or drug abuse. However, anyone who dances and parties all night and is still going strong well after sunrise is likely on some kind of uppers to stay in the action. Likewise, I saw no public lewdness. Occasional nudity and toplessness, yes, but nothing disturbing. Now, that might have been helped by the temperatures, which ran 10 to 20 degrees below the usual norm for the event, which is 95 degrees. Participants are mostly adults in the age range 30 to 50 years old, mostly white, but certainly not all. All gender and partner preferences are present and accepted. Again, the principle of radical inclusion. So, part 1, the playa. The man is a giant effigy atop a wooden structure, all told over 100 feet in height. Several weeks of labor go into it. It's designed to be both structurally sound and highly flammable, ready for its demise at the end of the week. The temple is kind of the soul of Burning Man. It rises from Black Rock City at 12 o'clock, as I showed on the map. It faces the man from about a mile away, and it beckons you to take a break within its walls. It was first constructed to commemorate the death of a person who had passed away in a motorcycle accident en route to Burning Man. And so it does carry the idea of a memorial. The temples have meant different things to different people through the years. Some people have a strong spiritual connection with it. Others use it as a place of contemplation, place of rituals, and weddings. Yes, weddings happen every year at Burning Man. Many write letters to the departed. When I reviewed this photo, I noticed a man on the left, just above the bikes over there on the left, who was expressing the principle of radical self-expression by arriving unclothed. We are called to express the principle of radical inclusion by not giving him any special attention. So here's a view on the inside of the temple. You see around the walls, there are some, and there were more as the week went on, various mementos and resolutions and thoughts from people. Now I have to wait for the next one to come up. Oh, here we go. So here's some of the mutant vehicles and artworks that fill the playa, both by day and by night. Moby Dick up there floating around. A mutant vehicle in the form of a lighthouse, a square rigger, a teapot, an animal of some kind there on the left, and well, this is Robot Heart, which you'll see more of later on because we were often near it, which is a mutant vehicle with a huge soundstage. There are bicycles everywhere by the thousands, and there are rolling sound shows. That's the one like Robot Heart. That sound system would more than fill a stadium. Here's a novel art installation. These balloons originally formed a loop around the playa about 200 feet in the air. Then they released one end of it so that it trailed off into the sky as far as the eye could see. It was successfully recovered subsequently, by the way. The balloons were not released. Something for bug lovers. The event's a mecca for fire dancers. Sunset on the playa with the chair and the Automan in the foreground. After sundown, the playa is transformed into an amazing light and art show. And it goes for miles. And there's my home base, the chair and the Automan. This is the octopus. It's an amazing mobile artwork. Some more playa art. This serpent you could enter near the tail and crawl up into all the way up to the head. Kids in particular enjoy doing it, but there were plenty of adults who did it too. A fish emerging from the desert. The Golden Gate Bridge in motion. A huge pyramid with graphics on its sides. This installation was, like everything else, created the week before and came down the week after. More mutant vehicles. So that was actually a good point to have a pause. We've got a little time for questions, answers, comments. How did this strike you? What do you think? I'm going to again stop the share. Any comments? Any thoughts? Anything in the chat? Let me look at the chat.
It's an amazing, enjoyable program. Thank you for doing it.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Charlie, how long does it take to build the temple and the Burning Man? I mean, and who does it before the festival starts?
Yeah, there's a year-round staff. Not a huge staff, but there is a year-round staff that works all the time. But 6 weeks before the actual festival, people start to show up, very committed volunteers who come in and work on it. So it takes several weeks. They actually lay a special foundation. Remember, they have this responsibility to return the desert to its original state. So they build a very special base that can tolerate the heat and the fire. And then after the burn happens, they clean everything up and take away the special base and restore it to the way it was. So that was actually a good point to have a pause. We've got a little time for questions, answers, comments. How did this strike you? What do you think? I'm going to again stop the share. Any comments? Any thoughts? Anything in the chat? Let me look at the chat.
It's an amazing, enjoyable program. Thank you for doing it.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you.
Charlie, how long does it take to build the temple and the Burning Man? I mean, and who does it before the festival starts?
Yeah, there's a year-round staff. Not a
okay.
huge staff, but there is a year-round staff that works all the time. But 6 weeks before the actual festival, people start to show up, very committed volunteers who come in and work on it. So it takes several weeks. They actually lay a special foundation. Remember, they have this responsibility to return the desert to its original state. So they build a very special base that can tolerate the heat and the fire. And then after the burn happens, they clean everything up and take away the special base and restore it to the way it was.
And who funds the year-round staff? Who funds the year-round?
People like me by buying tickets. Okay.
Peter, what's Peter's shtick, Charlie?
Well, basically, he has a whole bunch of costumes, everything from leather or leopard coats to those black T-shirts. But his main stick is the chair and the Automan. Those are really his contributions.
The chair, okay.
That huge chair, yeah. I mean,
that's very cool.
He built that from scratch 15 years ago, and he brings it every year. And then a couple of years ago, he built the Automan to complement it. So that's his part.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Let's go back to share screen and PowerPoint.
Oh, I may not be allowed. Let me allow it. Yeah, okay, it's allowed.
You're okay? So
Yeah.
we'll go ahead and hopefully we'll come out of it with a recording too. And if not, I'll just re-record it at some point. Okay. Part 2. I'm going to get this thing activated. Here we go. A change in the weather. First of all, midday Friday came dust and wind, and the horizon disappeared. Then came rain, turning the hard ground into mud. The streets became essentially undrivable. People who tried to walk got incredible amounts of mud stuck on their boots. And there was no travel at all for bicycles or for any kind of vehicle. The roads were impassable. The events radio station warned, stay inside, do not walk, do not ride a bike, do not drive. As we left a few days later, we saw cars and trailers cemented into the mud like the one on the right and basically abandoned by their owners. I'm not sure, it may have been the rental company that finally would have had to come and haul them back home. Cycling became impossible. If you had a bike, you had to carry it. Some embraced the rain and the mud. Some took all their clothes off, as a matter of fact, and wallowed in it, but I'm not showing pictures of that. And it didn't happen anywhere near me, but I know what happened because it showed up in the gallery. Anyway, the roadways were a mess. These pictures were taken just after all the rain had gone away and it started drying out. But you were lucky if you could get through in a vehicle. More mud. Note the stylish footwear on Diane there. And the little note that says the reports of flooding at Burning Man are exaggerated. The partying continues. Only the footwear has changed. Well, it did continue, but there were a couple of days there where it didn't. It was sort of like COVID isolation. Our campground, picture of our campground as the skies began to clear. Jessie is the woman with the white arm that shows in the right foreground. She was washed out from her tent. So she joined us for a refuge from the rain and the mud. She's standing on the trailer steps. Son Peter is standing on a large toolbox, resting in the mud and reflecting on the mud, along with 3 walkers who came over to pay us a visit. Many of the tent dwellers did seek out recreational vehicles and trailers when the rains came. Again, a case of the principle of radical self-reliance getting overridden by the principle of communal effort. People welcome them in. This is our setup in the trailer. As I say, not too uncomfortable. The door next to the TV leads to the garage. That converted into the bedroom for me. Above the door is an alcove reached by a ladder, which you see next to the TV. That's where Jesse slept. And Peter occupied the master bedroom, which was located behind the camera. Life was not all bad. We isolated perhaps, but we had air conditioning and Starlink. Your expressions of concern were very much appreciated, but in retrospect might have been a bit unwarranted. And eventually the rain stopped and the mud began to dry out. The camp lounge reopened. There was a campfire with marshmallows. And a rainbow, actually a double rainbow, appeared. Gradually, the playa dried out. Here's the waterfall family exploring the playa now that the mud is starting to harden up. Feet no longer sank into the mud. So we hit the road again in the chair. Me with my hand on the tiller, that's how you steer the chair. Peter playing the role of navigator there and also had his hand on the throttle. So, as I said, the playa revived on Monday night. Mutant vehicles returned. There's the shark by night. Some more of the vehicles. Fire dancers. And winged creatures. Interesting buildings, structures, and the burn of the man. Fireworks celebration, kind of like July 4th, from the Burning Man roots. It's the process of destroying the man, the boss, the outdated conventional attitudes, the end of the year, wiping the slate clean, sort of like the clock descending in Times Square. I was struck from the moment I arrived at the sight of thousands of people gathered around the man, awaiting his or its demise. I could imagine a similar ritual a few centuries back, perhaps even at a public execution. At least this was an effigy. Here's another, here we go. So then the morning after, a sunrise continuation of a party that had been going all night. On the right there, you see the robot heart and people gathered and celebrating. Closer up view of the sound stage. Robot heart in motion. The dancer up in the heart on its left side caught my attention, and Peter obligingly videoed her. The DJ in the yellow shirt at the bottom is creating the sounds. So between the man burn Monday night and the temple burn Tuesday night, there was a day to pack the camp and the vehicles up. The Automan and the chair come apart, so they were disassembled and loaded into a very large flatbed trailer with the help of a winch and some people pushing. So that evening, which was the last, the temple burned. With the chair and other mutant vehicles disassembled, we were all on bikes, plus Peter's one wheel, which was sitting there at his feet. A shot of the group close up. Me on the left, on the right rather, with my lighted vest. Awaiting the temple burn here, the crowd was subdued. There were many bikes, there were fewer vehicles, no music, There were some smiles, but this was clearly a solemn event. So the temple burn begins amid silence. A lot of people's thoughts and hopes and memories are in that fire. And it grows. And continues. There were occasions where somebody would try to run into that fire. And so they actually have guards around to make sure nobody tries to run into the fire. So the exit, a lot of people had the same idea. The problem was that this 10-lane packed dirt road led to a 2-lane paved roadway, just 2 lanes, into which all these vehicles had to funnel. By the way, the small structure to the right of the traffic is a rest station. They were placed along the roadway every so often because the exodus, the exodus could take hours, and you better not run out of gas. But if you waited a day or two, it was much better. I left a day later, and Peter left a day after that. So getting home, there was a slight glitch on the return from Black Rock City. There was no burner express bus to Reno. Problem was the Monday bus left on Monday, even though the whole festival had been delayed 2 days, it did not get rescheduled for Wednesday. What saved the day was that Tracy and Diane, as I mentioned, with their RV, took me to Reno. And then American Airlines switched my reservation, which I was very happy about. It was just frequent flyer miles, but there was no charge, and they got me back to Philadelphia. So ultimately, what's it all about? Well, for one thing, the counterculture origin, basically rebelling against the man for everything that the man stood for, counterculture kind of thing. The idea of living an alternate communal lifestyle. Well, it started out with more tents than trailers, but it did kind of evolve into a trailer and RV plus tents and other ways of living. Displaying amazing and ingenious artworks. Certainly that's part of it. The New Year's Eve concept, the New Year concept, out with the old, make a fresh start. From Charlie Goes to Burning Man, the video I mentioned earlier, Charlie says it's about death, about celebrating death. And I could see the justification for that. My take is Charlie's right, but a bit stark. It is a dramatic way of demonstrating that all good things must come to an end. So what did it mean to me? First of all, connection with Peter, of course, my son. Mind-blowing sights and sounds and experiences. Amazement at the ingenuity of the event's creators and at just the sheer scope of it all. Being immersed in the world of post-boomers and millennials, that's quite a jump in generations for me as a pre-boomer. And experiencing, of course, an unusual community, very unusual community. All good things must come to an end. That's another way of looking at it. So I wanted to mention this about the impact on climate change. There was essentially very little discussion about what does Burning Man do for climate change. It really was not discussed at the event. Questions were occasionally raised in media reports, and the response tends to be what I heard from Burning Man folks was that to begin with, 80% of the energy use is getting there and back. And the idea that if you didn't come here, you'd go somewhere else with your RV or trailer or whatever you were traveling in. Also that fireworks and fires are everywhere in our culture. We celebrate July 4th. We celebrate lots of other things with fireworks, including rock concerts. Bonfires are popular around football games and lots of other things. But still, it has left me uneasy. I think it's something that Burning Man going forward is probably going to have to address. So, question is, am I coming back? People ask me this all the time in 2024. Here's the answer. It depends. It depends on our son Peter's going back, of course, but it's very likely that he will. But it depends for me on getting a sense of what I missed because of the rain and the shortness of time and wanting to get back to experience that. I received a whole book, as everybody who attended did. I got a whole book of all the events and the artworks and everything that was available when I arrived. And I barely got started this year. Of course, it also depends on what else is going on in my life and Harriet's come summer of 2024. If I return, I know there's a lot waiting for me. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop. That's my talk, and would love to have any questions or discussion that you'd like to bring up. I'm going to stop the share.
That was just a wonderful, just a beautiful presentation of what it was like. And I just was thinking about what vicariously about what fun it would be to be involved in that kind of community, even in the short run, just to see what's going on and experience that. I mean, getting there and getting back is a big hassle, but being in that midst must have been quite energizing. I can imagine just looked like a great deal of fun.
Yeah. Well, it was. And as somebody who's into volunteering, I suppose if Black Rock City was just around the corner or within a couple hours drive, I might volunteer to be on one of those crews that starts things off and finishes things up just for the full experience.
Yeah, Charlie, it really made me want to go. It made me wish I had gone years ago and could compare. And working in Washington, I have to say, it looked to me like Burning Man was a heck of a lot of a better place to be and more good things happening than where I currently am.
Yeah, nowhere to go but up from where you are, I guess.
That's for sure.
Charlie?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes, Neville, hi.
Hi, that was great. Did Peter tell you about how different it is now, 15 years later from when he started? How did it begin? Was it much, much smaller? Were the principles already in effect?
Yeah, well, it actually began 30 years ago.
Oh.
And it began in San Francisco, I think on or near a beach or a park. And it was a much smaller group of people. And they got together and they burned a much smaller effigy. I think it was 8 feet tall when they burned it. But it was a counterculture group, and it was sort of defiance of the man that they were trying to express.
Charlie,
Yes, Becky.
I just wondered, I haven't read about a lot. The sort of cursory looking at headlines has always had me sort of write it off as a sort of a crazy idea that I really didn't know much about it. Do you think that the coverage in the press has been fair or realistic? How do you think it looks to the outside world on what's responsible for that?
I don't think it got a whole lot of attention until it rained. You would have seen things from time to time, when Burning Man came around, but I think a lot of people didn't know anything about it. And then the rain came, and the New York Times ran a picture on the front page, and suddenly everybody was very much aware of it. In a way, that was kind of unfair because the reporters all took their pictures and wrote their stories and left before the rain stopped and the skies cleared and the event resumed. If they'd stayed a little longer, they might have gotten a better idea, of what it was about. We'll have to see going forward now because of all the attention this year, whether they pay more attention to it going forward. I'd also say something that happened about the transition, the way this event has transitioned. Going back a few years, it became very popular with high-tech chief executives and people, very prosperous people who had the money to put into these Newton vehicles and special DJs and things like that, and who also wanted to live very, very comfortably. So they would have crews go out with trailers and recreational vehicles and station them, and then they would fly in and inhabit those things. And then when it was over, they'd fly back out, and the crews would come back in and remove all the stuff. They called it plug and play, essentially, for the celebrity. An interesting angle on that. The Black Rock City has its own airport, and it's not hard to build an airport. You just land anywhere you want. But they do have it disciplined so that there are runways identified. And for the week that Burning Man's going on, it's the busiest airport in Nevada. The rest of the time, it's not in existence.
Mhm.
Somebody asked about the $800 cost. Yeah, well,
That was me, Charlie.
yeah, okay.
Hi, Charlie and Harriet.
All
Yeah,
right,
I
all
was wondering. It's so nice to see you both. That was incredible. I loved just the images, the pictures. It brought me back to when I went to Burning Man years ago. I was one of those people who showed up with a tent. But I ended up sleeping in somebody's car because we had a terrible windstorm. And so somebody saved me, and I was in the backseat of somebody's car for a couple nights. But I did want to ask, is it true that it now costs $800 to attend? My other question was, can we come with you next summer? And most importantly, is Harriet coming next time?
No, Harriet.
Well,
It's not on my agenda.
I can guess what the answer to the third question is.
yeah, well, we have to see it, take it a year at a time. But as far as the cost goes, yeah, it's what they say the price is $575. And when you see all the things that the management does, it does cost money, and they solicit contributions too. So it's not just, that. But the $575, by the time they put all the taxes and state entertainment fees and everything on, works out to about $735, $750. And that the bus is $125 each way from Reno. So, you're looking at $1,000 to get yourself from Reno to the festival and back. And the criticism, that was raised with these, I mentioned a minute ago, the plug and play thing, celebrities, could come in and everything would be set up for them and then they could fly back out. There was such a push on that and so much criticism that they made a rule that you got to bring in yourself what it is you're going to stay in and eat and everything else. So if you're going to come, you're going to have to at least rent yourself an RV or a trailer and, bring it in, set it up, live in it, take it back when it's over. And it'd be nice if there was some kind of a scholarship program, but I don't know how that works. You may have to. Well, people organize themselves into camps. As I said, most people are in a camp of one kind or another, and the camp may very well share things around. The camp gets a certain number of tickets. They pay a fee, they get a certain number of tickets. So if you're affiliated with a camp, you might get a ticket for a lot less, thanks to the generosity of the other members of the camp.
Well, maybe the federal government can start giving scholarships. That would be a better use.
The man himself.
Change people's attitudes.
Charlie, I lived in that desert for 3 years, and just seeing the pictures of the desert reminded me and how amazing, at least this was in the 60s, and the clarity of the air you could see for miles, and storms that came, you saw them coming way long before they arrived, and it was just the clearest air I've ever felt in my life. It was obviously 50 years ago, but it was, the desert is an amazing space.
It's
like
very
living in the
dramatic.
middle of the ocean.
Yeah, the real analogy to the middle of the ocean. Yeah, I noticed that here. I noticed that earlier in my trip to the Alvor Desert in southeastern Oregon.
I've been there
out
too.
in the middle of the desert, it's just like being on the water.
Is there any continuity from year to year? Do you stay in touch with people? Do they make an effort to sort of keep you as a community?
Yeah, a lot of people come back. They've actually organized a dozen or so regional communities that meet during the year and kind of keep the spirit alive. There's one I think that meets in central Pennsylvania. I may get an invitation. I don't know, although whether I go or not, I'm not sure. But a lot of the people are repeaters. As a matter of fact, this is my first time, and I was called a virgin burner. there's actually there's a whole briefing and everything else for virgin burners. The first thing that happens when you're a virgin burner, you arrive on the express bus, you get out of the bus and they tell you to go over there and they point to a spot on the desert. And when you're all gathered, they say, now everybody lie down on your back and pretend you're making a snowman or, a snow angel. So you lie there on your back in the dust and you wave your arms back and forth as if you were making an angel. And by the time you get up, you're covered with dust and you're initiated. So that's what we all went through. I wasn't too happy about that because I was wearing my street clothes. I was going to change into a costume when I got to camp. So I did not return in my street clothes. I had to wear part of my costume back.
Amazing.
So,
Charlie,
Martha, yes.
mentioned that the trailers or the whatever the constructed things are came back when the rain stopped. Where did they go when the rain was raining?
Well, when the mutant vehicles, that's what they refer to them as, the mutant vehicles. The mutant vehicles go back to their camps. There are actually a number of camps that are called mutant vehicle camps, and we were all in the mutant vehicle neighborhood. So they go back to their camp. And in this case, when the rain started, they went back and just sat there for 2 days. There was no way they could move.
Right. Right.
So the way it normally works is when day dawns and the people get ready to take them out on the playa, they get in them and drive them out on the playa. And when they get tired of doing that, they bring them back to their camp.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Charlie, what was your costume?
Oh, that was the Charlie Peppercorn. It was the idea that I was offering a peppercorn for your thoughts, and I would just approach people, and I had little packets of peppercorns, and after they told me what was on their mind, and we had a conversation, I would give them a peppercorn as a memento. You may have missed the early part. I did mention this earlier on, and that was kind of my shtick.
What was the origin of Peter's chair?
It was an inspiration that hit him. I don't know. At the time that he built it, he was the CEO of a jewelry company in Eugene, Oregon, and they had just acquired a very large warehouse, which had a lot of empty space in it. And one day he just decided he would start building a chair. He taught himself how to weld, and then he would work during the day in his regular job. And at night, at the time he was single, or his girlfriend was somewhere up in the Hood River area, so he was all by himself. He just went to work on the chair, and it evolved from there.
Amazing.
Charlie, there seemed to be a lot of electricity going on. Was that from generators? And if so, was that pretty noisy?
I was never bothered by generator noise, really. There were a lot of generators. And we had a generator for our trailer, and there were other generators in the camp. For one thing, the sound tended to get obscured by the beat of the music that was going on all the time, and cheers of the crowd and other stuff that was around. But yes, there were a lot of generators. Absolutely. I started to say, oh, there was another thing, sort of like the Charlie Peppercorn. A guy came by our camp one day. Yeah, he had a funny little cart that had 3 roulette wheels, sort of things, spinning wheels. And he asked one of us to come forward. He wanted to do his thing with us, so I came forward. And he spun the wheel, and the first wheel he spun came out with a time, so that told you the arm of the clock that you had to go to. The second wheel came out with a street address, an H, like, for example, or an A or a B. So you knew that you had to go to, let's say, A, 3 o'clock. And the third one gave you a task that you had to do when you got there. So I went through it, gave me an address. He gave me a card that said, go to this address and ask somebody there for something that is important to your presence at Burning Man. So I did. Next day, I found the address, and there was a line of people waiting there. I don't know if somebody was giving out coffee or lemonade or something. And I just sort of walked along until I made eye contact. And there was a man there who was wearing bracelets, wooden bracelets. And I explained what I was there for. And I said, I think maybe you're supposed to give me something. And he sort of hemmed and hawed and thought for him. And he said, oh, okay. And he gave me one of his wooden bracelets. So I brought it back as a souvenir. I wore it all the time I was there. I'm not sure to what extent it inspired me, but you know, it was just a simple act. But anyway, that's the kind of thing that can happen sort of spontaneously.
Well. So we're
Okay, Susan, you got to unmute yourself. Oh,
I just wanted to say thank you. This was fabulous.
oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah, wonderful.
And Becky, I want to say the next to last slide in that about the climate thing came about as a result of your email today. It had been on my mind that there were concerns about climate and climate change, and I did some quick thinking and thought I might as well raise that issue because this was in the back of my mind too.
Well, thanks. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating. Thank you so much. I mean, really, what a trip.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie, it's Linda again.
Hey, Linda.
I just have to say, just with my work, I have to listen to all kinds of webinars and presentations and PowerPoints, and you are a pro. That was like the best. It was incredibly well organized. It was amazing to watch. It was like everything about it was just superb. So you're amazing. You're totally amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, the Pentagon could learn quite a bit from
Yeah.
you, having sat through a few of theirs.
Charlie, can you
Okay.
hear me? Charlie, can you hear?
I can hear, yes.
It's Nancy and Bob.
Oh, Nancy.
Can you hear?
Oh, okay. I can't see you. You're probably in one of the other frames.
Maybe. Oh, there we are now.
Oh, there you are. I see you now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure.
That was wonderful. I think you need to start something like that on the East Coast, maybe on the water.
Okay.
And,
Here.
I mean,
Would be
Right.
great. And your
Somebody
name-
get me a beach and an 8-foot effigy and we'll
Where,
yeah,
where,
well,
hey, Charlie, where will we find the YouTube? I want to
I
send
will call you back and I'll leave
cousin.
I'll tell you, I'll tell you, if you want to look at Charlie
Thank
Goes to
you,
Burning
buddy.
Man, it's really easy because that's the name of it, Charlie Goes to Burning Man. You go on YouTube and you search for that, Charlie Goes to
But I
Burning
want
Man.
yours because I want to send it to Carol.
Well, I hope, okay, well, I hope mine will be up. I don't know, you're talking about Carol Southall, who might be on here. She said she was going to try to get on here, but anyway, feel free to find it and send it around. Anybody. May take us a day or two to put it together. We might have to do a little splicing. There were a couple spots there where I had to back up and restart, but we'll produce
Really
one.
Fabulous, fabulous.
Well, we're close to the witching hour. So if there's no more questions, maybe that'll do it.
Thank you.
so much. It's wonderful.
Okay. Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for.
Lots of love to you both.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Charlie.
Bye.